Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Deal Street Asia PE and VC Summit. This next session we'll be talking about digital payments, entitled "The Importance of Leveraging Huge Ecosystems to Build a Payments Leader." And we have two very experienced industry participants with us today, who've got a long track record of experience within the industry in various different parts of it. First of all, I'd like to introduce Jaygan, who's the CEO of OVO, one of Indonesia's largest digital payments players, and increasingly getting involved in other areas of financial services. It is also the payments arm of Grab, but pursues an ecosystem approach to digital payments. I would also like to introduce Victor Lesmana, who is the President of Commerce and FinTech at Bukalapak, which is one of Indonesia's largest e-commerce operators, and also is a big enabler of SMEs through its Mitra Bukalapak business, and is also connected through Emtek with OVO through Grab. So effectively, we have a very large family here today. So without further ado, I'd like to sort of get straight into the questions. So I'll start with you, Jaygan. Just in terms of digital payments, what do you think is the best approach to digital payments? Is it through an open ecosystem approach, or is it through which is more tied to an individual operator?
So, Angus, thank you so much for the question, and everyone, thank you for having me. I'll answer that question in two parts. So, on the first part is we are very, very blessed to have good, very, very close partners like Grab and also Bukalapak, Emtek, that has helped us accelerate our user acquisitions from the, I call it the closed ecosystems. That allow us to basically control how we work together with our partners with regards to visibility, communications to partners. On the second part, with regards to open ecosystem, it's very, very important for us to also look outside, primarily because the user base may be different, and that's why it's a very, 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 very an important strategy for us to work outside. And with regards to some of the key challenges working outside, I think two things that I would see. Number one, with regards to how we coordinate, because like we only have 24 hours a day. How do we basically get work together closely, engage the partners with the right amount of cadences to ensure that both of us get that upside from that so-called commercial partnership. And number two, also, there's also other players in town as well. So definitely, we are getting pit against each other with regards to when we work outside of the platform, outside of the ecosystem. Sorry.
And what would you say are the kind of key competitive pain points? I mean, is it all about promotions and providing cash back and discounts and so on, or is there another side to the success which OVO has had, which is more service oriented, if you like?
Yeah. So I'll frame it into two parts. I think the no-brainer here is promotions. We need promotions to basically grow the user base, to get them aware of our services and etc. But I think it's very, very important for us when we do all these kind of promotions. It's very important for us to learn and also iterate based on those learnings, because it's no point growing user base where we can't retain, for example. So as we become more structured in our thinking, as we get more learnings, it basically converges towards a few top use cases, also merchant partners that we should work with to basically get that balance between promo spend and also retention rates. Number two is like as we become more mature as an organization, we also have to add value-added services on top of whatever we do today, because the very simple maths is this, right? Revenue minus cost equals profits, and as we basically dial down on spend, I think it's very, very important for us to look at how do we increase that average revenue per user to basically get that trajectory towards profitability.
Right, and you obviously you have had some quite big success, tying up with third parties already. I mean, I understand you're already providing digital payments for Lazada, for example. Are there any? What is your kind of target? Are you looking to provide the service across the board, or what are the barriers on other platforms to stop you from operating?
So I think OVO, we have been very, very blessed. We have been going through this hybrid model, the so-called closed loop and also open loop ecosystem. And as a result of that, we are able to be accepted across most of the online payments, online ecosystems today, and also offline, which is relevant, of course. And I think like with our wide acceptance, we then have to like I mentioned just now, choose how do we work with partners that give us that right balance between promo spend and also retention rates, which would allow us to build our base for the future, and eventually learn the customers, learn the profile of the customers much better, and then basically offer services that's tailored to them to basically increase that revenue per user lever.
Right, and you mentioned the offline. I mean, is the offline use case a very important part of the whole pie, if you like, or is that just a small part? Or what's the balance between online and offline? It'd be interesting to hear.
To be very frank with you, we do not discriminate online and offline. There's a huge migration from offline to online, especially during the pandemic period. But to be very frank with you, like offline is where customers basically become aware of digital payments such as OVO, for example, because like when we put in cashbacks in certain merchants, that's how people get to know, oh, OVO is available here, or with this cashback we are able to try. And in certain cases, we do targeted marketing to certain users to basically drive users to offline channels as well. And hopefully, when the pandemic is over, we do believe that the offline market will bounce back, and we hope to see bigger traction there.
Yeah, in fact, my first experience of OVO was buying a cup of coffee and seeing it beside the till and wondering, well, what's that? Yeah. And that was at the time when it was owned by Lippo. I think it was in the Lippo building. So that's how I learned about it originally. But I mean, I guess that's the same it's all about use cases in the end.
Definitely.
Victor, we might move on to you and take it, from the other side of the coin, if you like. So obviously you have a very large e-commerce platform with Bukalapak, and just wondered, what for you, what do you look for in the digital payments player?
Sure, of course. Thank you, Angus. So to answer that, let's look into Bukalapak as an overall ecosystem, right? We are not just strong in the e-commerce, but also we call it ourselves an all-commerce players in Indonesia, because we do have both on the online and the offline ecosystem through the Mitra Bukalapak, as well as other forms of commerce beyond the traditional e-commerce. And of course, in this case, we want to partner with players who are able to support our ambition in both on the online and the offline. And here we also take the approach of open ecosystem, similar like OVO, where we are, in this case, we want to make sure that we partner with the various digital payments platform that can support us in our needs. But of course, in this case, we are looking at a number of factors that we are looking at. Of course, the first one, of course, is safety, because as a payment, we need to ensure that the customers find that they believe on the payment platform. In this case, for example, whether it's OVO or any other players. Convenience, because in the user, it should be seamless in terms of the use, how the customers can use in our platforms. A wide user base is also important, because we want to make sure that when we partner with a certain digital payment platform, it will help us to reach out to many more users, and in this case, the options will be much more effective. Reliability and accessibility is of course important, and of course innovation is very key, because in this kind of a very I would say competitive landscape, partnering with players with a high degrees of innovation will allow us and also be able to move fast and come up with solutions that might not be around at the moment, and in the future will help us to come up with solutions that will meet our needs to grow and become profitable. So I guess in overall, that will be the things that we are looking at in our payment platform partners.
And do you effectively? I guess you run quite an open ecosystem yourselves in terms of accepting multiple forms of digital payment and non-digital payments, for example.
Yes, of course. Here we, as an open ecosystem and open platform, we would be partnering with a lot of these players, right? Whether it's banks, whether it's a fintech, whether it's e-money players, is to make sure that we have covered a different user bases, because we understand that Indonesia, it is such a very diverse population and user base. There are certain players who are strong in the big cities. There are players who are strong in the second tier and third tier cities, and we need to, of course, partner with as many players as possible. While at the same time, of course, we understand there will be some strategic partnership that we will be working with because of the similarities in the strategic direction, or whether similarities in the goals. And this is where we have a lot of discussion with a lot of partners to understand where they are going, where they are innovating, and of course, having this alignment will help us that there will be a synergy between the ecosystems, both on the, like in this case, as the commerce platform as well as on the payment platforms.
Right. So in other words, some concentration without being closed to multiple, digital payments players. But the concentration obviously gives you access to lots of things. Give you access to more data, give you access to industry development, potentially other products. I guess there are multiple veins of possibilities if you have, a stronger relationship with a few players, say. Is that right to say that?
Yes, in a way, I will say that, right? I think it's like I mentioned earlier, right? It's especially with Bukalapak focusing on the financial inclusion. We also have a lot of goals to be able to reach out to even those that are currently might not be sexy enough for a lot of these digital players, right? Because the money might not be there, but at the same time, we foresee that as the market evolves, these players could become a very strong source of growth. And not the players, this kind of customer segments and user base. And we want to make sure that we come we reach out to them earlier and become the first choice as a platform, and of course working with the payment providers. And I think we have been working a lot toward and talking with our strategic partners on how we reach this financial inclusion together.
Yeah. Well, actually, that leads on to the other point I wanted to ask you about, before we back to Jaygan. Just on that, Mitra Bukalapak is a massive growth business, and you have very strong share in that kind of digitalizing warungs and the whole kind of online to offline business. How important is introducing digital non-cash payments to those customers? Is that an important part of the development of the Mitra Bukalapak business to make those customers more sticky?
Sorry, is it a question to me or to Jaygan, I guess?
Sorry, that was to you, Victor. Sorry, I was going to just ask you that one question.
Oh, okay, sorry. I guess I was... All right, sure. It is very important because this is... First, we see that more than 90% or even like almost all of the transactions that are happening in Mitra Bukalapak are still cash, right? But then we also feel that there is a lot of opportunities because as the government is still trying to push for digital payments, for example, through QRIS and also through the support of all these e-money players in Indonesia. We are actually one of the first players who pilot with Bank of Indonesia in 2019, even before it was launched, with several thousand of our Mitra Bukalapak. With very good result, we have a lot of people are saying, hey, not even as SMEs, I can now accept like all these e-wallet players like OVO and the like, right? or Dana, for example. And because of QRS as a standard allows the it means that it's much easier for the SMEs to be able to accept all these e-wallet or e-monies without the need to connect one by one. We have seen that the feedback have been very, very positive. For example, one of our Mitra Bukalapak who has been selling like fried stuff on the road, they were saying that, look, my sales actually increased by 3 times since after I actually accepted QRIS, because now people who previously didn't have change, or they might not have don't have the cash, now because they have the balance, because they use it for example for their ride hailing and so on, they can just use the QRIS to make the payment, and then it will help them to grow their business very well. And again here, this digital payment we also see it as a way, like Jaygan mentioned earlier, that this is to get people to know about the ecosystem, right? In this case, with QRS, also as part of Mitra Bukalapak, they get introduced to the various products that or offerings that we have. For example, now they are able to sell digital products from bill payment, selling phone credits, paying taxes, and we started from something as simple as, now if I can accept payment, now also being able to do many more other businesses, and it becomes a very good fit to introduce the users to our ecosystem.
Yeah, so I mean, it sounds very sensible. I mean, the whole introduction of the Chris was a very big positive for the whole industry, to be honest. It makes life a lot easier. I mean, obviously in Indonesia historically, we've had seas of EDC machines at every retailer. So if you didn't have your particular EDC, you couldn't use your card. But obviously that's not been the case with digital payments, luckily. Jane, I'm going to move back to you with some questions. I mean, you're obviously expanding, the financial services that you provide through OVO. Small loans, buy now, pay later, for example. Could you give us some idea of the sort of roadmap and how you see that expansion of additional financial products going? That could become, I guess, a bigger portion of your overall business, and possibly one that is more profitable than pure digital payments.
Yep. So Angus, let me go back to the point that I made earlier, which is average revenue per user. So these are some of the innovations that we are embarking on to basically allow us to basically increase that revenue per user. So that's like how we're thinking about it now. There are multiple ways to basically increase that revenue per user, and I guess it's very important for us to basically dig deep and ask ourselves, like, where would enable us to where would allow us to basically solve the customer's pain points the most. So when we speak to our customers, for example, we realize that they want to transact in higher basket sizes, and that's where we look into products such as buy now pay later, and also buy now pay later, which we will relaunch soon. And number 2 would be a partnership that we are working with BRI, where we offer credit cards, an OVO BRI credit card to our more tech-savvy customers, where they are able to basically pay for higher transaction sizes. But there are a lot of differentiators with regards to the features that would bring consumers back to us. Number 2 is when we look into our ecosystem again, we are very lucky, like I mentioned just now, we have Grab, for example. So we work with Grab drivers and Grab merchants to understand their pain points. And when we listen to our drivers, we realize that, hey, you know what, they are in need of loans and etc. And we are very, very blessed in the sense that like when I travel across the country and speak to drivers, their pain point their trigger for credit is like, there's a wedding coming up, a daughter's wedding, for example, kids going to school, Lebaran coming up, and then some of the merchants that we spoke to as well, with Lebaran coming up, they don't have capital to buy additional like chicken, for example, when they sell ayam goreng. So when we speak to more and more of these merchants, our partners, merchants and drivers, for example, we realize that there's an opportunity there to offer cash loans. The question then we have to ask ourselves is, how do we basically ensure that when we offer these loans, number one, it's basically beneficial to our partners, and number two, also, we need to have the right data to enable us to score them much better. Since we know where they stay, how their productivity levels. So this is where we are able to basically disperse these loans with confidence. And lastly would be from the investment side. We also see there's a lot of there's this hype of investments, especially during the pandemic period. Like even myself, for example, because all the shops are closed, you have additional cash, right? And that's where we see some opportunity there to basically work closely with Barexa to basically offer services as such. And one of the highlights that we were able to do was we do this thing called instant redemption, whereby you buy a money market fund, and then when, let's say, you run out of OVO credits, you are able to basically redeem that, and basically it goes to your OVO cash instantly. So that basically, so in short, what some of the so-called power customers do is they basically put money in our MMF product within the OVO app, and then when they want to transact, for example, they basically redeem and then basically transact versus putting it in OVO cash, because they get a bit of that interest. Yeah.
So that's interesting. So that's a money market instrument. So you're basically getting a small rate back on that. And what kind of customers would be using that? Would that be everything from drivers to merchants to anyone with who's a bit savvy about making their money work?
So to be very frank with you, when we launched the product, we have a certain targeted user base where there are more power users that use OVO very, very often. But we are very humble in the sense that we've seen a lot of new take-up there, whereby customers are trying it out because the minimum investment size is about 10,000 rupiah. So it's basically getting more new customers into the investment platform. I think the challenge for us, and I believe challenge for most of the platforms today, is how do we retain them within the platform? Because like especially now with uncertainty and etc., liquidity is like people are less liquid compared to 2020 and 2021. So how do we basically retain these customers to continue to use us in the investment space?
Yeah, I mean, I guess feeding them with or getting them to use a number of different verticals, if you like, within OVO is a good way of keeping them sticky on the platform. And that's the same is true of the kind of the Grab super app strategy, I guess. The more services a customer uses, the more likely they're going to return and stay with the platform and get used to it. And I guess the end sort of the logical endpoint to all this might be something like providing some kind of, you are effectively providing financial services, but something a bit more akin to a bank, which I mean effectively in some ways you're doing by giving people the access to money market products and so on. From a Victor, returning to you for a second, for the Bukalapak's perspective, and how important is it for for a digital payments provider to be able to offer other financial products for Bukalapak? Is that something which you would find like a big draw with using a particular player more than another?
Sure. I guess one of the, I would say, is natural synergy between a payment product with other financial service will be on the buy now pay later, right? Because from the way we see it, there is a big need in Indonesia for such a similar for such products, because a lot of especially closer to the for those who are relying on salary, closer to the end of the month before the salary, usually there's a need to have additional cash, especially for urgent needs, and being able to do so, having a payment provider that already have those kind of capabilities will help to increase the spending power, which will then in this case, because they are already using the payment platform, that it will be easy. Then the customer, they don't have to reapply again, right? Because it's already natural extension of the payment product. At the same time, we also see that I think here as a payment platform, right? It has a very huge advantage because of the large user base, and it's used on the very regular basis, because you can actually penetrate into the multiple use cases, not just in the, for example, e-commerce, but also ride-hailing, food delivery, and the like. So definitely, we see that there's a lot of data that they can actually they have from the customer behaviors, which can then be used for many different purposes. For example, by providing like cash loans or other forms of lending products, which then, from the platform's point of view, then it's that it can become a natural fit, right? Because we have a lot of products or a lot of things that people need for their daily life, whether it is for productive usage or for consumptive usage, and then having a payment provider that provides the ability to make payments seamlessly and easily, plus also the financial services that helps them to fill the gaps when there is not enough cash flow. I think all this will be is a very important, very powerful combination.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it would also fit with your Mitra Bukalapak business as well. Being able to offer those merchants the ability to borrow and to take
exactly.
out, say, a pay later loan. I mean,
Yes.
I understand that
Right.
you already use that as a way of offering merchants a kind of a revolving credit facility in a way.
Yes, indeed. Actually, we had this product in Mitra Bukalapak, which we called Buyer Tempo, which we have launched it for about 2 years ago, and we have seen a very good traction in the market, because here at the Mitra Bukalapak, we also see that they have a very limited cash flows because they need to buy inventories upfront, and then a lot of their capital are being stuck in terms of physical inventory or physical goods that they have to resell before they can actually get the cash. And many times, the cash, when they receive it, they will need to use it for the day-to-day business. And having the ability such as this similar buy now pay later concept, it can be used for the working capital, so they can procure the goods that they need to sell first without the need to put their cash upfront, and then after that, when they receive the money from the customers, then they can repay to the for the loan, right? And we have seen it has received a lot of positive feedback as well from our Mitra Bukalapak, and of course, this is one of the ways that we see that is. When we talk about consumer loans, it's not necessarily just for consumptive purpose, but it can also be used for productive purposes.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, and I guess, Jaygan, I mean that's an area that you would also look to target in a way as well, is the kind of merchant borrower. You might have a bit more financial information on them.
Definitely. Because I think as a merchant, we know their behavior, how good are their sales, how active are they transacting. So in a way, their risk profile is also, I would say is because they transact mostly in our platforms, we have a lot of the data. Well, for consumers, right? Consumers have a lot of choices. They can transact in various platforms. They can use. They don't necessarily just go for one single places. For example, for their groceries, they go to one platform. For their hobbies, they will go for another platform. So the data might not be complete, right? But then if we are talking, looking from the merchants or the SMEs perspective, definitely we have a much richer set of data.
Very interesting. Okay, Jane, why don't we go back and take a little bit of a sort of a longer term view on how the whole digital payments industry might develop, say over the next 3 years, and that's a long time in digital economy terms. I know, given what's happened in the last 3 years, things have changed massively. But how do you see that the ecosystem evolving over the next 3 years? And do you see more players in the market, or do you see that we've reached a kind of equilibrium in terms of the number of players, and it will all be a case of kind of gaining or losing market share with the same players operating, or do you think you might see some consolidation within the industry? There are only really 5 major players at the moment in Indonesia. There are a few others. There's AstraPay, for example, which is very industry specific. But how do you see that ecosystem developing?
So, Angus, if I will approach this question this way, right? Like, my definition of digital payments is pretty much e-money players and also the other B2B players out there as well. And I think my simple answer here is this, right? I believe there'll be more players in the market, but serving different niche. For example, we are starting to see a lot of startups coming up, solving a certain need, because there's a lot of pain points. Like, for example, like today, one of the pain points for a small merchant would be to accept all payment methods. So who do we work with one integration? Because the constraint for that small merchant, it's an engineer, for example. So we will start to see a lot of all these niche players coming up to basically solve a niche pain point within the industry. My view is this, right? As the industry in 3 years' time, my belief is also, with the help of all the ecosystem players out there, we do believe that the take-up for digital payments will definitely rise. Simply because they see the need. It's basically more convenient. And number 2 is also, like, especially for the late adopters, one of the key learnings that I observed is basically when their friends start to use it, they also will end up using it, because this is a similar trend that I see in my previous job in Grab, where when in 2013, when we first started implementing, basically selling the driver app to the taxi drivers, when I wear a Grab shirt and go to the taxi drivers, they would say, "Hey, don't come to me, I don't want to talk to you," for example. But if, let's say, their friends were to recommend to them, "Oh, it's a good product." So I think that is what we will see in 3 years' time as well, where we start to see adoption, especially in the 2nd tier and 3rd tier cities as well. And finally, I think with all the ecosystem players out there, we do believe that the synergies between the payments player and also the ecosystem players will basically be maximized for 2 reasons. Number 1 is, from a payments perspective, we work with ecosystem players to get more users. For the ecosystem players like Victor, for example, we do see that as digital payments become more advanced, we do see customers. Basically the measure of success here is the payment rate. The success rates in payments basically improve significantly. The number of clicks to achieve payments would improve tremendously. So these are some of the innovations that I hope that we can really drive in the next 3 years.
Very interesting. Victor, over to you. Do you have any thoughts on the next 3 years?
Yeah, definitely the next 3 years we see that I guess, and like OVO has already started, right? Which is and the digital payment itself is just the entry point for people to start using it. But then once people are already in the ecosystem, using these payment platforms, to retain and to make sure it becomes embedded in their daily life, that we need to make sure that the payment platform, the scope is not just payment itself. It can be an end-to-end financial solution. So of course, in this case, it's important to have a wide payment acceptance. That's why I think there have been a lot of cooperation between a lot of these payment platforms with ecosystem like us and Bukalapak to expand the acceptance in these micro SMEs, as well, and then also making sure that there are a lot of different solutions from the I think there are a lot of solutions on the lending side or on the investment side, like the OVO and Bukalapak, which I think is a very, very interesting, right? Because then you combine these two different elements into one without even and it becomes so seamless, and it's going to be important. Yeah, I think it's going to be important that in the next 3 years that these players, for those who are going to win in the market, will need to be able to encapsulate the different use cases so that it becomes embedded in the daily lives of the users.
Yeah, no, that's very interesting. I mean, I guess, you know, where do you see the biggest risks? I mean, it does look like a very interesting future for the industry, given that, you know, no doubt you're going to see continuing take up of use of digital payments, you know, and obviously, you know, from Indonesia's perspective, you know, there's a huge potential into, you know, rural areas where obviously, you know, Bukalapak's very strong. I mean, where do you think that the major risks are? I mean, is it suddenly that all the banks decide to take this as I mean, it's quite, I guess it's for the banks, it's a relatively low margin business, and it's more of a, you know, another service they can provide. I mean, is that something you would worry about as a competitive pressure?
I guess the way I see it, right, is like having the biggest risk probably more on how do we make sure that the customers are using it as part of daily life, even without the support of the subsidies and all the incentives that we are giving, right? Because as a predominantly cash-based society like Indonesia, I guess it requires like a fundamental shift. I guess we have seen it in India, right? Where, for example, when there is like a top-down push, then suddenly the digitalization and on the cashless becomes much faster. Indonesia, somehow there is still like this push and pull between the needs to have cash and also the digital payment, because also of the inconvenience of translating between cash to the digital form. And of course, at this stage, it is such subsidies are still necessary or required. But in the long term, right, I don't think that could be sustainable. So the risk is how do we, that if the customer behavior don't change, it doesn't become part of their daily life, then it becomes a very, very, I would say, expensive proposition to be able to continue to incentivizing the customer behaviors.
Right. Very good. Thanks very much, Victor. Jaygan, do you have any final thoughts on that?
I mean, just to add to what Victor mentioned just now, I mean, like one of my biggest learnings in Indonesia is this. I think it's very easy, it's very easy for us to say, like, you know, banks can disrupt, or this guy can disrupt and that can disrupt. But I do believe in the core of that business. Like, for example, if we really know who we are working with, I feel that those are the details. Those details would be that unfair advantage for that particular organization. Like in simple words, like everyone can create nasi goreng, but why do we still go to that special store of nasi goreng that we like? Because it's just as simple as put rice, put a bit of meat, vegetables, and then stir, right? So I think that is, I feel that's the core of how we basically ensure that we basically add values to our customers. Actually.
Yeah. So it's the secret sauce that counts.
Yeah. I totally believe in that.
We're now actually at the end of the session, so it's been a very interesting discussion, and thank you very much, Jaygan and Victor, for some great discussions, and have a very good day. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.